Hello everyone, it's April 2009 here, and welcome to part 11 of Thomas and Friends What Ifs, where I go through your comments and give you my thoughts. Conductor Production 7411 asked, what if the narrow gauge engines stayed like they did in the hit era? Fans would have been really disappointed by this if they stayed in this babyish way, but then Madge could have returned. Here we have a bunch more from Conductor Productions. 1. What if Thomas was narrated by Morgan Freeman? He has such a great voice for storytelling, but I'm not too sure about Thomas. I would love to see an AI concept of what this could be like. 2. What if Laurie Ford did appear in the show? They would have to bring the other 3 Lauries back for this to happen. But I'm not too sure what they get up to, but I think it would be great to see all 4 together in a TV episode. 3. What if the Tatmar human characters came back into CGI? This would be so weird. They most likely wouldn't have got the original actors to come back, so I don't think this would have been too good. 4. What if George became a member of the pack? I do think he deserves at least another episode in the show. If this was part of the pack series, this could have been a proper redemption story, explaining why he suddenly seems so nice and calling on engines. But I don't really know why the pack would need 2 steamrollers, but I'm sure something could come out of this. 5. What if Thomas visited Ireland? I don't really know what he would get up to in Ireland. This would fit into the big world era best compared to anywhere else though. 6. What if Henry stayed blue in the books? People constantly confuse him with Gordon, especially going into the show. Edward and Gordon are always being mixed up. When I went to Drayson Manor last year, there was an Edward replica and some children are pointing at it and calling it Thomas. 3 main blue characters seem more than enough, so Henry being blue wouldn't be too great. 7. What if Isabella and Elizabeth had an episode? A smaller Isabella plot would have to be built for this. These characters are quite similar, except Isabella seems a lot more determined. The Nintendo Beetle 8002 asked, what if Barrett D199 managed to appear in Series 3 for an adaptation of Super Rescue if they had the budget? They would most likely have grey faces instead of yellow faces, since that's what they did with the other Diesel characters. There'd also be a lot more merchandise of these 2, and Bear could appear in many more future episodes. Scott Malkinson is W asked a few. 1. What if Thomas never got his branch line? He would have stayed station pilot, and similar stories to the events of the Thomas Tank Engine book would keep happening to him. I'm sure he would eventually get something more interesting to do though. 2. What if Edward, despite trying so hard, couldn't move at all during Edward's exploit? The passengers would probably have to get a bus home, and the big engines would feel their point was justified. Edward would still be repaired though, because I don't think the Fat Controller would ever scrap him. 3. What if Douglas didn't take a goods train to the scrapyard? Oliver, Toad and Isabel would all have been scrapped, and more diesels would come and help the railway. And 4. What if Topham never met Toby? Toby would have been scrapped and Henrietta would have been turned into a hen house after their railway closed, and Thomas would most likely have gotten cow catchers and side plates. Marisol Pinson asked a few. 1. What if the Ghislaine era continued? David Mitton probably wouldn't have stayed to direct, so Steve Askiff would have taken over anyway. Since Series 8 wouldn't have been an establishing series, there probably would have been new characters, and the episodes themselves would have been more moral heavy, but they would have been more interesting and better written. 2. What if the publishers didn't reject Christopher Rorty's ideas? There wouldn't be so many Thomas Hunter stories, which in many cases would be good. Barry the Rescue Engine would of course be published, and I know he planned to write another narrow gauge book. We also could have seen another Coldy Fell Railway book, and some more parts of Sodal's history that we never saw could also have been made into books. 3. What if the Topham Hatt decided to send James to the scrapyard after crashing into the sheds in season 21? This would mean that Henry likely wouldn't have left the steam team if Rebecca took James's place instead. And depending on when you want to put Journey Beyond Soda into the timeline, if James was scrapped before this, Thomas would likely have been lost on the mainland for a lot longer. 4. What if Duck became a main character in season 18 in the episode Duck and the Slip Coaches, with the addition of a new shed? Fans would have been so happy about this. We could have seen so many more episodes on the Little Western. Joey the Train Guy asked, what if the Topham Hatt quit? The railway would either go to someone who loves steam engines and wants to run the railway the same way as the Topham Hatt did, or someone who wants to modernise the railway and tries to scrap the steam engines. I think this would make a great idea for a film. That Boy Dylan 15 asked a few. 1. What if the railway series was never a home success? The series would probably only have the first 2 books, and would have fallen into the pile of generic 20th century children's fiction, and would never have been adapted for TV. 2. What if James died on his first day? If an engine actually died, then the railway's safety would have to really increase. And also another engine would have to replace James. 3. What if Christopher Audrey never had the measles? Wilbert never would have wrote the stories, and the railway series had never existed, meaning that the whole Thomas franchise just wouldn't have happened. 3. What if Edward was the main character of the show? Having the number 2 engine as the main character could actually lead to some really great plot points of Edward trying to get the recognition he deserves, whilst Thomas gets all the fame for being number 1. 4. What if the show ended after season 5? Ending a TV show whilst it's still good is always a good idea. Although most people from Generation Z onwards would never have seen Thomas, and this fandom would not be as big as it is. 5. What if the show ended how it started? I don't think this would have worked too well in this case, but if this was the Railway series, it could have worked in this loop system. Just a great noise of people who have been there since the beginning. 6. What if Thomas was never an E2? The E2 tank engines would likely have been forgotten without Thomas, and whatever bases they choose would immediately become famous. Let me know in the comments what alternate bases you would have given Thomas. 7. What if Magic Railroad never existed? Brittlecroft never would have left, and Series 6 onwards would have been just as good as Series 5, and eventually more Railway series stories would have been adapted. And that is all for today. I am getting more and more comments for this series, so just a new policy: if I've skipped your comment from any videos before part 9 and you still want me to answer it, please put it in the comments of this video just to make it a bit easier for me to process. And with that, I want to thank all of you for watching, see you in the next video, and goodbye for now.